Welcome back to the CNC on CFB show. We are back in the home base here. A little bit of hectic scheduling, busiest time of the year for pretty much everyone in this country. I would say Thanksgiving, Black Friday week, all that stuff, Con. But we are back to give you a recap, what we saw end of the regular season, and preview what we're going to see in this conference title weekend. Con, we got some interesting games coming up, and we saw some interesting results this past weekend. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, welcome back to an excellent episode because we get to break down Rivalry Week, which is my favorite week of the entire sports calendar, I think. It's, even the games that don't matter. Now, this year we had a couple that really, really mattered.
Yes, we did.
Even the ones that don't matter, the hatred between fan bases that builds up all year and you have to wait an entire season to get to this game makes it so special, so much fun for all of these games. But yeah, why don't we kick it off and start talking about some of them?
Absolutely. Sounds good. We are going to change things up a little bit for you guys, beautiful people. We are now just going to run through the visual, kind of show you guys behind the curtain. Look, we're going through, we can see the scoreboard, the box score, the stats, just helping talk through the narrative.
Yep.
And without further ado, we had the Egg Bowl on the only Thanksgiving. Yep.
Which, very fun that they do that every year. That's a cool tradition
Absolutely.
that they play on Thanksgiving. Other than that, the better team won.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, it was cool to have, I guess, the Egg Bowl, one game on Thanksgiving, but I think the NFL kind of has a stranglehold on football for Thanksgiving. Yeah, did not really maybe watch too much of that. Interesting though, little side storyline which we'll touch on later down the line here in short order. Will Rogers changing uniforms. We'll see where he goes, but just an interesting foreshadowing.
And here I thought you were going with the other interesting little piece of this, which is that Mississippi State's got a new head coach coming in.
That as well.
Yep.
With Jeff Lebby should be an interesting. We won't type too much in, but for avid followers, there's been a lot of news to kind of take in now. As soon as the games were done, all hell's breaking loose with coaching carousels, transfer portal madness, sagas, which we're just getting started. I think it officially opens not even till next week, a week from today maybe, but until we're going to see.
I believe, actually, I could be wrong about this. I believe it's on Saturday.
Saturday. No,
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yes, that's early December. I think December 3rd or 5th. That is definitely the case. But yeah, Will Rogers, a host of others. We will see. A lot of SEC roundup or shakeup, we should say. But Friday now. Kicking it off with Oregon State. Oregon, when I say they, look, I think reaffirmed what people's thoughts are of Oregon at this point, and especially with Vegas, with how they even see maybe the Pac-12 title game shaking up, which is a crazy. We'll get in the lines. Not trying to. Let's stop jumping everyone. 31-7, Con. Oregon really demolished Oregon State.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway here was just how much different Oregon looked against Oregon State than Washington did against Oregon State.
Sure.
Obviously, with the build-up to that Pac-12 championship game coming up. But as far as breaking down the actual game, the score kind of tells the story.
It does. Very much so. Bo Nix, look, I think he is making his case as much as he can possibly do to get that Heisman Trophy, but I think he'll be the first one to tell you there's more on his mind, and that Oregon team, we will see. But looking absolutely like they are kind of a shoo-in for the CFP. They're just on a crash course.
Yep.
Maybe avenge that loss. We will see. We'll give you our predictions. But speaking of a team that looking to avenge an early season loss and looked pretty good against a Texas Tech team that I believe they didn't have their QB1 that they did when they played Oregon, which as a point of comparison in this whole CFP landscape, people are like, oh, well, recency, look at what Texas just did. Con, how do you view the 57-7 win Texas just got?
I think that this was a very good outcome for Texas. Obviously, not just it's always great to beat a team by 50 points, but because a lot of the chatter around the sport has started to become if the committee has to decide between Texas and Alabama, what do you do? Texas won head-to-head, but ever since that game, Alabama's looked like the team that is putting everything together, and Texas looks like they're barely holding on.
Sure.
This weekend was the exact opposite, and we'll talk about that Alabama game when we get to it, because there's a lot to break down there. But
Yeah.
but
Yes,
this
there
for
is.
Texas was a good way to say Texas Tech, even down their starting quarterback, they're a 6-6 team. They're not awesome, but they're not this bad. They're not 50 points worse than Texas. Texas went out and hung it on them. They played great.
That they did. And really, yeah, intrigued to see. Look, everyone's been saying, when are we going to see that kind of vintage Alabama Steve Sarkisian that really kind of recatapulted his career, obviously to the Texas job? We'll see. This might just be Texas's potential year. I'm not saying they're back yet, but look, they're doing kind of everything that they can at this point in their power. Speaking of another not very close game at all, Mizzou capping off a incredibly good season for them.
Yeah.
Top 10 team. And look, this is kind of like the seasons for these two teams, Mizzou and Arkansas, kind of what their seasons have been, respectively, in a nutshell. Arkansas, I mean, just a tough year, but like I just referenced with Missouri, as good a year as I think you could have hoped for.
Yeah, I mean, Missouri doesn't go 10-2. Missouri doesn't finish the season ranked in the top 10 in the country. This is huge for Mizzou, especially just based off of what they've been in recent history.
Yeah.
And I mean, you talk about trying to build something. This is what a first step.
Oh, yeah.
To have the first step be 10-2 in the SEC. I mean, that means you're, potentially, if you stay on the right path, talking about being in the college football playoff next year. 12-team field they'd be in right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and maybe even, look, with the 12 team, and then is it the top four that gets that I think will get buys?
Yes.
So, okay, they could be a team that ends up being able to host a game, being
Yeah.
the top four of that next group. But yeah, that should be unbelievable shakeup with next year. Seeing college football playoff games home, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, one more thing to touch on there. I think I told you like week 4 of this season, we're going to watch Sam Pittman get fired. And he kept coaching to get fired, basically. They went 4-8 without any. And Arkansas just said, nope, run it back. So we get another year of Sam Pittman.
Yeah, and I think we did see so to save face and the natural order of things, they had to kind of scapegoat somebody. I think they have changed OCs.
Yes.
That has been the case, but they're looking like there might be another quarterback shakeup with KJ Jefferson might be headed east to my Gamecocks. We will see. In a nutshell, I give it to Lenoris, man. The rec specs.
Yes.
We need Mr. Rec specs, but
And also, we don't have a ton of time in this one for the comedic relief that we have done with Connor Stallion's vacuum cleaners and whatnot. But Arkansas bringing back Bobby Petrino is objectively hilarious. But we can talk about that
as well. Yeah, that shakeup in it. Yeah, that's that exactly.
We can talk about that at a later date.
Yeah, absolutely. We can. We will. Penn State 42-0 over Michigan State. Pretty much, I guess, how you would have envisioned this one going. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State's just, they lost their coach, so I guess reserve judgment on them till next season, but it was not a pretty year for them, and this was not a pretty game. And I mean, good for Penn State. They kind of got back to what they were early in the year when they were hanging it on bad teams, which is what they did. It's another team that, as much as it probably feels like a disaster of a season for them, because they really thought this year was the year that they were going to be winning the Big Ten, this is another team that if we had a 12-team playoff, they'd be in.
Yeah, they would. No, they absolutely would be. Just a, I don't know, maybe semi-poetic end of their regular season with how Drew Aller looked pretty good and kind of maybe just utilized him in a way that you had hoped they would have been able to in some bigger stages this season. But nonetheless, just a prototypical Penn State season. We'll see. Yeah, going to be in a good bowl game, and probably going to have a good, play a good bowl game too, and a good matchup to be determined, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think enough said there with Penn State. We will see next year. We'll see the momentum that they bring into next year, but certainly a team to watch for absolutely a 12-team playoff next season. TCU against Oklahoma. Well, congrats if you had the over from this one. I mean, wow, just a lot of points, a lot of points. And Dylan Gabriel, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Dylan. But
Yeah, that'll be interesting to monitor. This was so TCU officially finishes the year with a losing record now, which coming off a college football playoff
yeah,
appearance. Yeah, I mean that's one of the more shocking things to happen in the sport, I would say.
I think it's got to be up there. It's on one hand though, it's like obviously relative to expectations, but they were so kind of out of nowhere with the run they had made last
Hmm.
year relative to those expectations. Such a shock surprise team with what went on last season. So then, yeah, obviously you set expectations this season, but there was just so much turnover, so much turnover with this team. But nonetheless, I mean, you would have expected a lot more than a 5-7 team.
Hmm.
Um, at least I would say maybe two, a 7-5 team, at least a couple wins better, at least a bowl, like you're saying, at least a
Yeah.
bowl team. But that's not looking like the case. Oklahoma, man, as looking like we could have looked like we maybe were going to get our Texas Red River or Texas Oklahoma Red River rivalry rematch game, but getting to that another team in a little bit, but just not meant
Yeah.
to be.
No, and I'm glad that the season's over. They have one bowl game left because I'm done trying to figure out Oklahoma. I mean,
Fair enough.
I tell you they're frauds. They come out and beat Texas. I finally give them all the credit. They lose to I don't even remember who. And every week I think they're going to be good. They're bad. I think they're going to be bad. They're good. I think that I certainly didn't have them scoring 69 points in this game. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Credit to Jeff Lebby, and I mean they've had it rolling for a good parts of the season, but haven't on other strange parts, as you've alluded to.
yeah.
Just yeah, an interesting team that again I think probably a favorite to potentially get, depending on what happens with Dylan Gabriel, but potential favorite to get back to or get to. I guess no, because there was a couple 2 year stretch back to back. They were the 4 seed in a 4 team CFB.
Hmm.
Another team that I think would be very intriguing in a potential expanded CFP. And as they move, talking about just talking about the Red River rivalry. Well, with Texas Oklahoma, both with that SEC next year. There's still a lot. There's a lot going on. Lots of process, but we're keeping it with what we just saw here.
Hmm.
Oklahoma ends their season on regular season on a bit of a high note. We'll see. We'll see how it truly closes a couple weeks from now.
Hmm.
But all right, Iowa, Nebraska.
It's a tough one for Nebraska. It weirdly felt like a magical season for them, which just shows how far that program has fallen. A once great program was, I think, what, 5-4 at one point, and dancing in the locker room. We got a winning record, and
Yeah,
finish at 5-7. Don't become bowl eligible, which is I don't know how many years in a row now where they haven't been bowl eligible, but
yeah,
it still feels kind of like this season was a step in the right direction.
yeah. Like some first year Matt Rule, some momentum, some
Yeah.
relative momentum. I think, which it's on the surface, yeah, 5 losing season, 3-6 in the Big Ten. It's something where maybe you can, but I guess he'd be the first person to tell you, any coach at this level, no moral victories, right? But
Yeah.
I think headed in a maybe better direction than where they've been, the last several years here. But yeah, we'll see. Very interesting team out of the Big Ten. Obviously, the conference, how it's going to shake up with some
Mhm.
West influx, but with Nebraska in particular, we'll see, especially with Rule's ability to recruit, who's going to be their quarterback next year. That's an interesting storyline. We will, of course, monitor over the coming weeks and months. But
Yes. And on the other side of that game, before we move away from it,
mhm,
how many 10-2 teams that are playing in the Big Ten championship have ever fired their offensive coordinator?
couldn't get the quota. You've been talking about it for weeks. Just couldn't get the 20 odd points
25
that was
points a
needed.
game he needed to average.
Oh man, yeah. But the
Yeah.
other Ferentz, as the leader of the ship, as the captain, I mean, he keeps churning out these seasons, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Hell, it's a really good season. 10-2, playing in the Big Ten championship
Yep.
game. Would be playing for a berth in a 12-team playoff if there was one.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely, which is all you can ask for, I think, because you're in the, yeah, with the Big Ten West, look, it's going to be the complexion again. It's going to change a lot next season with the conference realignments and of sorts, but it's always the
And
Big Ten East.
well, we won't have to worry about that going forward. Big Ten is
That's true.
abolishing divisions. They're just going to go with the two top teams.
Yeah,
So
so if anything, it's a sneaky win for Iowa to just kind of shed that label, and yeah, just
yeah,
the Big Ten as a
they're
whole.
playing in the last ever East versus West Big Ten championship game.
Sure. So yeah, some definitely some things in the line, but that's a great point with the whole conference shakeup. Yeah, I mean, it's just so much going on, so much thinking of what can possibly happen. But again, let's just stay. All right, Tulane beat UTSA. I think how this one can be kind of summarized. Just a tough showing for UTSA. Frank Harris, seventh year guy, going out on a bit of a tough note. Bit of a tough note for me as somebody who had him in a college fantasy championship. Tough way to start the matchup for me there. I'll be interested. I guess Tulane, great season for Tulane once again. Basically the I guess New Year's Six representation as they
Yep.
did against USC last year in that thrilling game. Jeff Traylor was a subject of a hot topic, and I think he'll continue to be in potential coaching carousels. But overall, two of the better Group of Five teams, and just Tulane just took care of business there.
Yeah, and you look at that UTSA record if you haven't watched a lot of Group of 5 football, and you're like 8-4, one of the better. You don't realize they started off really slow. I believe they were 3-3, and then they put everything together,
They did.
And they have been over the past few weeks one of the best teams in all in Group of 5, and they happen to run into the best Group of 5 team,
That they did, and
or
just,
second best if you're a Liberty guy like me.
Okay. Well, yeah, and they are the only undefeated one. So, yeah, just tough way to see Frank Harris, college fantasy legend there. But let's get into Saturday games here. The normal day of our worship of college football. Georgia, Georgia Tech, only an 8-point win for the Bulldogs, but maybe a little bit misleading of the scoreline there. I think, look, it's just get into the SEC title game, right?
Yeah,
Just
once Georgia had was it an 18-point lead in the fourth quarter, and I can understand taking the foot off the gas a little bit and thinking about Alabama a little bit.
Yeah. Shift. Not to. I mean, you never want to get too caught up or look ahead, right? But if there was ever a team that had an impetus to do so, in the fourth quarter of a game, it's Georgia, trying to just stay on that fast track to a potential three-peat would be quite a story. Which it's almost like desensitized, given that, I mean,
Yeah.
they've just repeated. Here's another undefeated season. I mean, I feel like they've somehow been a little bit underrated of what's gone on these last couple seasons with Georgia. And especially if just as another, I guess, kind of wrapping up this regular season preview, obviously they're going to be on the look more than likely like they're bound for the college football playoff. Although who knows? We'll see. We'll get our predictions in a little bit. But especially with Carson Beck potentially returning, just Georgia, what a program Kirby Smart has built. I think anything more to add there, Con, or
No, I think you made a good point. We are almost a little desensitized to they're going for a three-peat. This is not something that happens. Like this is how but they've
No.
been so good we almost don't even talk about them like on
a little
this
bit
show and other
fatigued. Yeah.
it's just like, oh yeah, Georgia won again.
Yeah.
When we should be going, wait, how many wins in a row is this? This is insane.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Exactly right. And I guess speaking of powerhouses that are just kind of on riding the momentum year to year now, I think, look, with Michigan, first three-peat in their Ohio State rivalry, arguably the best in the game, just tough way to end that game for Kyle McCord, one of my guys, but fan of his, but being honest, just, if only, and people, it's funny, people have said it at the, and a bunch of analysts in the sport of football, just general, oh my God, Jim Harbaugh, he's got a, he deserves benefit of the doubt. I mean, this guy somehow beat CJ Stroud 2 times in a row. I mean, it's just, Ohio State quarterback play just wasn't quite good enough. It was a much more competitive, especially being on the road. It was a valiant effort for sure, but just a little bit short. Michigan, right, controlling their own destiny. I think bound for obviously a top two seed. But
Yeah, I think JJ McCarthy uh probably deserves a little more credit than he gets because they have been specifically without Harbaugh on the sidelines, but all season they haven't asked him to do that much, which makes you go, can this guy do that much? Which
yeah,
I think is somewhat fair. But then when he needed to in this game, he threw two He only threw two long passes all game, but they were both unbelievably perfect spot, perfect time to throw it,
yeah.
perfect everything. Both in big spots, and yeah, that's so. I came away from this going, JJ McCarthy might be a lot better than we realize, just because they don't ask him to throw the ball downfield all that often. At least this season.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, yeah, especially with how the Penn State game went and the 32 consecutive runs in the second half.
Yeah.
It's easy from a narrative standpoint to build, like he's just kind of like a passenger along for the ride, Blake
Hmm.
Corum, Donovan Edwards, and with the Michigan philosophy, I guess, Big Ten football, run the ball. But he is an uber talented guy, dual threat ability,
Hmm.
just hasn't really been asked to do as much as he has shown he's capable of.
Hmm.
Given, I guess, kudos to give. I mean, it kind of speaks to the strength of Michigan as a whole on the team. And oh my God, if need be, they have him. If they gotta throw it, they can with
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy. He's a very interesting, semi-polarizing guy. But look, I think the moral of the story is he is definitely capable of leading them to a potential national championship, and really interested to see momentum he maybe builds for his draft stock, potential top 10 pick. We'll see. But it's funny how you set that up, Con,
Hmm.
with JJ McCarthy, because speaking of a guy that maybe fell under the radar, albeit this was in his high school recruiting process because he was running a wing T offense in Texas, Cam Ward. And the rise, if you will, of a guy that, yeah, similar to JJ McCarthy, just although at a much smaller level, but Texas high school football, still quite a level, we'll say. Just skills kind of went a bit under the radar,
Hmm.
not recognized by most, I would say, but then gets to Incarnate Word, then transfers at Wazoo the last couple seasons, really lit it up, and really had this Washington Cougar team having the Washington Huskies in Seattle on the ropes. And honestly, I think outperformed Michael Penix in that game.
Uh, I think he definitely did. It was an incredible offensive performance by Washington State. Watching the game, it's almost surprising that they only scored 21 points because.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that game was the one thing I will say is they had Washington on the ropes, just like seemingly everybody else all season has had Washington on the
Yeah.
ropes. And
Yeah.
at a certain point, I mean, we've talked about it a bunch. Are they frauds? Are they pretenders? At a certain point, if you just win all of these close games every time it looks like you're going to lose, and then you don't, you pull out the win, maybe you're just a really good football team who never loses.
Yeah. No, it is exactly. I mean, I mean, it's when it matters most. Time and time again, they're pulling through.
Yep.
It's really the matchup, I think, obviously for the championship weekend. Excuse me. But
Of course.
yeah, enough. We'll circle back to Washington soon enough. But in terms of another currently CFP ranked, potentially bound team, Florida State, they were on the ropes in Gainesville
Yep.
for the large part of this game. But ultimately, Trey Benson toted the rock, got him some scores, and they walk out of there with a 9-point win. Con, how do you? I'll tee this up for you. How do you feel about Florida State? Obviously, with what we just saw, and then we'll just address the elephant in the room. Do they if they're undefeated? Do they deserve to be in the CFP?
I feel like we should table this till we talk about the CFP scenarios
Okay.
because I've got a lot to
Any
say.
hints?
But
Any just a little hint? Let's see. I think I'll put it this way in my book. The eye the eye test in your heart of hearts, I don't think they're beating any of the potential matchups. Well, the potential matchup I think would be against Georgia or maybe a Michigan. So I'll just leave that question, that rhetorical question for now. But yeah, just we'll get back to Florida State soon enough. Just I don't know. I mean, any game specific comments, Con? You want to just?
Yeah, it was ugly. It was not
That's
a fun game to
a lot of
watch.
field goals, a lot of
Yeah, not, and it's two backup quarterbacks going up against
hmm
each other. We know, we knew obviously coming in, Mertz and what's his face, Jordan Travis were both out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it was yeah. If you're talking eye test, neither of these teams passed the eye test last week. But
Nope, nope, nope. But I guess in the realm of eye tests, Bama. Bama, I mean, there is, it feels like, it's funny, I've seen maybe some people, maybe ESPN kind of propaganda with some SEC bias, but I mean, Bama, Auburn. Man, talk about a crazy ending. I mean, there's been this in the Iron Bowl.
craziest end to the Iron Bowl ever, right?
I mean, it just somehow adds to the
Yeah, no, the
fold.
fact that it's not is what's so crazy
Yeah,
about this rivalry.
yeah.
But yeah,
I
that
mean,
I mean, it was. I saw on Twitter someone put it perfectly. Someone had said, talking about a potential Alabama versus Texas who should get in different scenarios thing, and someone said Alabama just needed a miracle to beat Auburn, who stinks. Someone replied to that and said, "No, Alabama needed consecutive miracles to beat Auburn, who stinks."
yeah, yeah. So it's the debates. I mean, they can go so many different ways,
Hmm.
and again, it's as much as we criticize the committee. I mean, it's like good luck to anybody trying to make sense of it all, and
Hmm.
not trying to be a committee apologist by any means. We'll get into our own rankings or preview of what we think the ranking should be as a result
Yeah.
of the predicting this upcoming
And when you
championship
hear from
weekend.
us next week, we will criticize the committee, no matter
Yes.
what they do.
No,
So,
exactly, exactly. So we'll give him a break, maybe sort of, kind of for now. But yeah, Jalen Milroe, clutch when it mattered. He was really, really vocal. I think said some Heisman jokes, but I don't think he hasn't done quite enough.
no, that was crazy to me that he would even think that
Yeah,
that was a potential,
in the moment.
or to have that be your Heisman moment again to barely beat a 6-6 Auburn team.
Yeah, fired up.
Um,
I'll
yeah,
it's
give
a
him a
little
pass. No, I will
understandable. Yeah.
say the clutch in the moment is big, and feels like if you have a guy who can do that in a big moment, those are the types of things you look for in a championship team.
hmm
The other thing I will say is the story of that game was that Alabama was struggling because Auburn was getting to him and hitting him. And then on the final play of the game, 4th and 31, they decide not to send any pressure after him, and he's able to,
Put up a
yeah.
prayer. And that was answered. But
But interesting coaching decision to say the least, I would say.
sure, sure. Nope, absolutely. But speaking of a game that kind of came down to the last play, Kentucky, Louisville, tough way for Louisville to end the regular season. But I'll just kind of leave it as simple as this, Con. Quite a motivated team getting into the clash against an FSU team. I think it's going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. If they'd won this game, they would have the extra
Outside,
motivation of, yes,
yeah,
still an outside chance at the college football
yeah.
playoff.
I don't even if
Um,
I don't know that.
it would have been a long shot, but,
hmm
scenarios could have played out.
Could, yeah.
Now that's no longer on the table.
No, no, but still props to Jeff Brom and this season for Louisville. I mean, just a really unbelievable.
It's it's been an unbelievable
Yeah,
season. That's the
kind of
perfect
like,
word for it.
kind of maybe in the same boat, I would say, as Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou. Kind of
Hmm.
in the same relative to expectations you might have had going into the season, but more so with, I think, impressive Brom being it's his first year taking over the program.
Yeah.
But yeah, quite a season for Louisville. Tough way to end the regular season, but still a lot to play for. So really interested to see how the ACC title game plays out. Um, moving on here to A&M and LSU. A&M up for a decent chunk of that game, but Jane Daniels and that LSU offense, you can only kind of push them away for so long. It's
Mhm.
just kind of bound to happen. Just an incredible season, obviously individually by Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, a bunch of guys. I mean, just probably the most fun team I would say in my book to watch into offense. Not if you had to watch the defense for a lot of the season, most of the season, quite honestly. But any what closing thoughts do you have on this one, Con? Either two teams matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching this game and I did have the thought at one point. Is Neighbors the best receiver in college football? You know, Marvin Harrison Jr. gets all of the credit, and he is incredible, and he made that incredible catch while being tackled in that Michigan game. And, you know, the guy's unbelievable. I've been calling him the best receiver all year. But you watch some things that Neighbors does, and he's special. I mean,
Oh, he absolutely is.
and
Absolutely.
I think maybe he gets a little bit, doesn't quite get the credit he deserves because so much credit's going to Daniels on that team.
It's kind of just
Yeah.
go back and forth like a seesaw of giving credit where it's due. But it's just, I think they're both with talking about, Neighbors, Daniels, and Thomas. In my opinion, they both can exist in their own right individually, and it's been a beautiful symphony of offense and touchdowns.
It has been. They've had the best offense in college football.
Oh,
It's been the most electric offense in college football.
It's been up there with their arguably best team ever in college football history with the Joe Burrow. I mean, it's been up there. It's unbelievable. It's just a shame that the losses that they suffered, and especially obviously to open the season, and then in a ridiculous, an Ole Miss, a 55-52 type game. I mean, just a tough, but nonetheless, it's been super fun as a fan. To take this all in. And like you just said, I think it's a very interesting case. Potentially Marvin Harrison comes out of college football, not with the Blitnikoff Award, but look, I think he should have absolutely gotten it over, I think maybe Jalen Hyatt, because of talk about the eye test and what's on the field. Tennessee, a little bit of a more, I'm not trying to be unfair in saying gimmicky, but with Jalen Hyatt, kind of more of maybe a little bit more of a one-trick pony. And with what Marvin Harris did last year, and it's just interesting. We'll maybe do a future award show prediction, but Malik Neighbors, though, like you're saying, he is a special player. And speaking of
special players, the best player in the country played in this Arizona State game. Maybe the best player on the planet, better than Patrick Mahomes.
Look, I mean, he deserves that impassioned introduction, and it's funny, when we started this channel and this show, I mean, he was early, I think right as that transition at quarterback was taking place, obviously the injury play, I mean, a bunch of factors that obviously go into all that stuff in college football. But Noah Fafita, I mean, the darling of the show, and will continue to be. I mean, you guys saw it early here, folks, in the recognition we gave to Noah Fafita, and he sets a program record. I mean, the guy was just unconscious, 500 plus yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, again, brutal if you had to face him in a college fantasy championship game, which I did, as well as another guy we'll get into in a bit here. But Noah Fafita, I mean, just Arizona. I think I'm at this point, I'm looking at next year as soon as I can get props for them to make the expanded playoff. I think I'm looking to do that.
And for him to win the Heisman. And
I mean, rightfully so. I mean, we're kind of just at a loss for words right now. And I think we've talked about him enough on the show, and our sentiment is quite clear. And just a really good season for Arizona. We'll see. Would love to see who they end up facing in a bowl game, and with obviously the beauty of Fafita, he's going to play in it. Not yet draft eligible, but should be quite a fun bowl scene nonetheless. A game I don't want to really focus too much on. Notre Dame, Stanford. I mean, somehow Notre Dame end up 9-3. Maybe probably what exactly they're over. Vegas kind of over under win total was right on that line, I guess, but. Just a very mediocre 9-3, I think I would say. Stanford, just I guess we'll see Stanford in the ACC, as crazy as that sounds. But speaking of the Big 12, I guess we didn't really speak, but we're now speaking of the Big 12. Will Howard, kind of tough way to go out for him. He's now in the transfer portal. We'll be very interested to see where he goes. But also with Treshaun Ward, I mean, just a lot of stuff going on there. I did not realize. I guess we'll just quickly. You know what? Maybe now's a good time. Best bets. Look, in that best bet short, I believed in K State at home to cover 9.5. Boy, were they not able to, and boy, did I completely miss the snow game and the snowstorm that it was going to be, and basically serve as almost like an equalizer, right? Talk about conditions that can just kind of really make a game kind of a little bit rugged and ugly,
Hmm.
and maybe against a traditional game script. Well, that was the case in Manhattan. Um, yeah, tough. Tough if you had the best bet. And if you, although I did kind of joke, kind of half-heartedly, maybe fade. Maybe it was the time to fade me. But yeah, I can't blame you if you didn't or you did. I mean, any other thoughts on this other than I guess Sama for ISU? Talk about a ball and honorable guy. 276 and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Um,
Unbelievable.
yeah, no, I'm gonna run through I think the rest of the board that we have up
Yep.
here really
Yep.
quickly, starting with that game we just talked about. Don't care. Neither of those teams are worth talking about, really. No offense.
No offense. No
No,
offense.
seriously, the only thing I would want to talk about is where's Will Howard going in the transfer
Yeah.
portal, which
Stay
is
tuned. We'll tell you on the show
yeah,
once
which
we
is
figure
not
it out.
even talking about Kansas State. It's talking
Nah.
about a guy leaving Kansas State.
Yep.
Um,
Talking
B,
about
yeah, BYU stinks. Oklahoma State, we've talked about them a bunch. They really surprised me. I didn't think they'd be this good this
nope.
year.
Shout out Ollie Gordon. He's going to be that engine of that team.
Yeah, it's also just that's consistent coaching to the next level. This
Hmm.
is just all they do is win a lot of games and be ranked every year.
Nope. That is right.
Vandy, Tennessee, don't care.
Nope.
UNC, NC State, fun rivalry game. They did. There is a lot of hatred there, so at least you got that going on.
Sorry if you had UNC minus 2.5 best bet. Just saying.
The one thing I'll touch on, Brennan Armstrong, really nice season for a guy who had, you know, mixed results. We'll call it at Virginia, and
Yeah, I think maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess just maybe more or less ACC veteran. I guess what you could have reasonably envisioned. I think. But for NC State, 9-3 season under the radar 9-3, I
yeah,
guess really. But no, yeah, I mean to your point, no, leads them to a top 20 type season. NC State deserves some flowers
big
there.
win over the rival
Yep.
too. I'll let you talk
South
about.
Carolina, Clemson, man, tough if you had the over in that. It's like it's another best bet. But yeah, just really brutal. It was there for the taking, honestly. South Carolina, we could have won that, should have won that, at home, but just wasn't meant to be. So, tough to see Spencer Rattler go. Shout out to him. We declare him for the draft, but yeah, we will see. Tough season. Need we better be. I think three wins better. I hope next season. Honestly, there's with all the rumors, all the speculation. Tough way to end it for my Gamecocks, but
Yeah, double loser too, which stinks. You miss out on bowl eligibility when you lose this game, and it's
and
the
the
big rivalry. Yeah.
and the rivalry implications. Yep.
And then Liberty, shout out to them as I already did. Just I don't even particularly care about the school at all, but I've been a big Jamie Chadwell guy for a long time, and cool to see him again go undefeated.
Hmm.
Still waiting on him to land that big job, but
Yep. But all right, I think that's quickly sums up our recap of the rivalry weekend. I guess just to reiterate, I just kind of naturally we segued through my best bets. Con did realize a 2-1 record. Michigan took care of business. Arkansas State and Marshall took care of business
yeah.
getting the over. Just a tough day for Georgia Southern
Mm-hmm.
and trying to cover against App State. If they had my guy Jalen White, the RB1 who was producing for them, if only they had them, but was not the case. Look, guys, let's chop this up real quick. We will get back to you real quick with this conference championship weekend preview. Con, we're back.
We are back. We're talking about the very important conference championship games coming up. So we
Yep.
are going to skip out on some of the ones that do not have college football playoff implications. But let's go to the one everyone is talking about. Everyone's been thinking about all season, really. Certainly since Washington beat Oregon early in the year, and the potential of this rematch for a college playoff football for a college football playoff spot.
Hmm.
Uh, it's all been realized. We're here. We're on the doorstep of it. We will get to watch this game. What do you think's going to happen?
I think Oregon's got this. I look. I don't maybe think to the tune of 9.5 is a lot. I think a lot, a lot. I was kind of there was a big shock factor with that, but I think that just speaks to look how these teams are viewed. Like you say, with Washington, there's kind of the unquantifiable look. They're winners. They keep winning and winning and winning, finding a way to eke it out. But I think people also on that end of the spectrum, or the devil's advocate, is they're about to run into a buzzsaw with Oregon. And look, I think it's going to be like a touchdown game. Oregon wins by about a touchdown. So I'm not super confident on the line
Mm-hmm.
in terms of betting, but I just think Oregon's got this. Con, where do you lie?
I'm getting deja vu here,
Okay, okay,
because we had this same conversation leading into their regular season matchup, and going into that game, I said I think Oregon's the better team, but Washington might be better at winning or something like that. Um, and then that's pretty much how that game went. And now we have the actual stats to back it up. Washington is as good at winning as you can be. They've won all of their games, but Oregon does look like the much better team.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I think Oregon wins it. I think everyone thinks Oregon wins it. I think that's why this line is so high.
yeah.
But I don't want to count out Washington because,
No,
as we
not at
talked
all,
about
not at all.
earlier, that's just what they do is seemingly not play super good football but win.
Hmm. No,
So yeah, I can't pick a side on this one.
gotcha. All right, going into the other games that really matter. We've got OK State against Texas. Texas minus 15.5. Really big line for a championship weekend and a matchup of top 20 teams. But look, Texas riding a hot streak. We just saw what they did against Texas Tech. Con, I'll kick it to you first.
Yeah, I mean, it's a conference championship game. You're playing, if you're Texas, you're hoping that you're playing for a spot in the college football playoff with this game. So there's no way that this is a trap or a letdown or a look ahead or any type of spot like that. You're going to bring everything you have, and I think if Texas brings everything they have, they're just better than Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I know absolutely. I think I would, given how big the line is, I kind of would lean Oklahoma State to keep it within, I would say, like 14 points, a couple touchdowns, to be honest.
I think Texas is still coaching for style points. That's why you saw them win by 50 points
Sure.
last week. They
Well, that
didn't
I
have
guess
to do that,
with what's
but
at stake too.
exactly,
No,
they
that's
they want the committee to watch them come off a couple strong big wins. So I'd go Texas given the 15 and a half here and say if they're up 14 in the fourth quarter, they're not going to run it out. They're going to try to score another touchdown, win by 21.
gotcha. No, I mean, fair enough, fair enough. I just think maybe Ollie Gordon might be enough of a one-man wrecking crew to make it semi
He's a hell of a
interesting.
player.
Yep, that he is. Georgia Bama. I will, I guess, quickly kick this one off with in keeping my best bet of this week. I've got Georgia minus 5.5. Con. I think there's been a lot of obviously Alabama conversation. Oh my God, they're on this course path to the CFP. Oh, but yeah, well they've got to beat Georgia,
Yep.
which has been the best program for a couple years running now, and I just don't think Georgia. If anything, I think Georgia, Kirby Smart, he's going to find a way to motivate these guys in a way that they're somehow the underdogs. Um, Hungry dogs run faster, right? But there's just so much Alabama discourse that ultimately, look, you got to go through Georgia, and I just don't think they're going to be able to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was actually saving my best bet for this game too, to be on the exact same side. One of the things that we have talked about as we've been approaching the college football playoff is these things always work themselves out. We always think we got too many teams for four spots, and
Mm-hmm.
and then they work themselves out. Teams that are in contention lose and fall out of contention, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the main things that has like all of the fun. What would the committee do in this scenarios? they all hinge on Alabama winning this game, almost to the point where I feel like people are just writing it off. Like, yep, Alabama wins this game, and then what? And
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, you certainly can't do that against Georgia. So yeah, I got Georgia -5.5. Since we were going to be on the same best bet there, I will switch my best bet to the Texas -15.5. I
Okay.
like that play.
Okay. Sounds good. I guess we'll just go down to the other couple quickly that matter. Michigan, Iowa. Michigan 21.5 point favorite. I guess this might be, looking at this might be one of my co-best bets. Or if I had to pick if you had given Georgia first, this is maybe where I would have gone. I just think Michigan, talking about stuff that worked itself out, a Jim Harbaugh return game. I think they're going to be up for it, and I don't think Iowa has anything close to the offensive star power to compete. So, yeah, that's kind of how I see this one going.
I think we officially have a conference championship game gut off.
Okay.
I
Okay.
like that Iowa defense keeping it within 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns is a huge number.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Okay.
can
I
lose
like
by
it.
21 points and still win on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that Iowa defense is really tough, and as we have said, they're not trying to unleash JJ McCarthy and have him throw the
Hmm.
ball all over the field. They're going to be trying to run. Iowa's going to know it. They're going to be setting to stop the run. I could
Sure.
see this being like a, 21-10 Michigan win.
Okay. Well, you guys just heard it here. We got a championship weekend gut off for you. But quickly, let's go back. We will round out with Louisville, Florida State. I guess another best bet, maybe it's another gut off. But I really, looking at this line, I like Louisville here. I like Louisville to really be motivated and up for this game. And look, I think Louisville comes out and wins this game against Florida State. And I think that makes for very interesting CFP potential scenarios where potentially hook 'em Texas maybe gets in. But Con, what's your ACC take?
Uh, I don't know. About this one. It's so tough to try to place Florida State and what they are right now and how they're going to come out and play. So I guess I'll also take Louisville here.
Okay.
But I I could see Florida State winning this game just as much. It's 51-49 in my head.
Okay. Fair enough. Yep. I think the line kind of indicates that. Very interesting matchup. I think if obviously Jordan Travis was healthy, totally different story, but
Yes.
this isn't the reality. So, all right. That's our take on the conference championship weekend. We will quickly transition now to kind of our final look, how we think the CFP is going to play out as a result of this weekend. Welcome back quickly to our final predictions. How we see the CFP playing out, Con, as a result of how this weekend in conference championship play out. I will lead us off quickly. Look, I already indicated I got to go Georgia, and then Louisville, Michigan, Texas, Oregon. So potential chaos points. We'll not go through two. You guys can pause and read it if you need to. My final results. So we got Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Texas. I think that's how it's going to play out. I think that's really the most likely scenario in my book here. I guess the potential pain point is, well, what the heck's gonna happen in the ACC? And I'll just pose this question quickly to you, Con, and then we'll go into your scenarios. Is there a world where Florida State barely ekes out a win and it looks kind of ugly against FSU or against Louisville, excuse me? And meanwhile, you have Texas go out and really take care of business, a 20+ point win. Is there room for them to, in the back of the committee's mind, and maybe in the heart of hearts of all the viewers, Texas would just beat Florida State? Do they just get in over an undefeated Florida State in that scenario?
Are you asking me what would happen or
What
what
would
should happen?
what would happen?
What
Do you
would
think
happen? I think the committee has been very clear about being very unfair in the past, whenever given the opportunity to, and they always couch it by going, you know, we don't. It's not supposed to be the four most deserving teams. It's supposed to be who we think are the four best teams. And I don't think they think that Florida State is one of the four best teams in the country.
No.
The counterpoint to that is the games have to matter. If you are an undefeated Power Five conference champion, what's even the point of playing a season if you can win all 13 games, win your conference title, and get left out? And I don't think they want to set that precedent that would even be on the table. So from that perspective, I do think Florida State still gets in, but I think there would be a lot of people in that conference room where if they decide these things, standing on the table for Texas in that scenario.
Yep. Going to be very interesting to see how it really plays out. But let's go, Con, your scenario.
Okay.
So,
well, I had the exact same teams winning as you, but for the sake of argument, I was very close on the Florida State one, and I was very close on the Washington one. So just to give us two different points.
Really, I think the two different scenarios that are the most likely individually, I think, is a fair point to say. So, final results here. We look at Georgia, Michigan. Obviously, they're 1-2 bound at this point, and then Washington, Florida State. So really, kind of what I think it's been. So in this scenario, it just kind of it just holds.
Yep.
It holds true.
Now I don't know that this computer simulation is factoring in a Jordan Travis injury into
not at all.
But for the fun of it, let's get into some of the weird scenarios, huh? Do a little where Alabama wins and see.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's say Bama, and then keep it with.
Let's throw Florida State in the mix here.
Florida State will go Michigan. There, no matter what. Texas. And we'll go Oregon.
Sure.
So this is definitely a chaotic scenario. We come down to a potential Michigan. So this ESPN model has Michigan, Florida State, Oregon, Texas. Quite a group of four there.
Yeah. With Alabama on the outside looking in with the win over Georgia. And Georgia, who's been the best team in the country all year, who would still be 12-1.
Top.
Yeah, not even knocking on the door there.
Yeah, I guess I would disagree with how this played out. I think, man, oh my god, the precedent here.
Again, I stand by.
Wraps my head.
I stand by. The games have to matter, and Texas and Alabama played, and Texas won. So to put Alabama in over because you think they're better, how could you possibly do that? They played. No. They proved who was better. Yeah. I know that was one Saturday in September, and obviously the teams change and evolve throughout the season. But these two teams physically played each other. It would be like putting Ohio State in over Michigan, even if you think they're better. They played and Michigan won.
Yeah. Oh my God. I guess in a way, maybe on merit, the computer does. This in the scenario that we just laid out. It kind of So it does maybe. In terms of merit, it's like can Bama really play their way into this? Which, look, if Texas takes care of business, I think this is really obviously the pain point. Really, Texas thinking. I think we both are with the mindset. Look, they should take care of business and win the Big 12.
I think Alabama this weekend, they are huge Louisville fans because if Florida State does not win this game and Louisville does, Alabama's in that spot in this scenario.
True. Do you, I guess...
they're also huge Oklahoma State fans, of course.
Yes.
Get Texas out of there.
Yep. Nope, that's absolutely right. I guess, looking at this we've kind of outlined a lot of a few of the scenarios. I think the most relatively reasonable, I think, in terms of really the conundrums that are that is going to come down to. I guess the one last pretzel that I got there is, do you think there's a path for Ohio State to backdoor into? They're at 6 now in the ranking, the eyes of the committee, for them to backdoor, because at 6 right now, they're already ahead of Bama, Texas, but they're obviously not going to be having a chance to play and put something in front of the committee. Although what it is, just as last year, They have a 6-point loss against the second and undefeated, clearly one of the best teams in the country, away.
And we watched that play out just last season, where
That's
same thing. They got it. Now, obviously, everything else in the country was different.
Yes, exactly.
But that Big Ten scenario was exactly what it is now.
Yeah.
I think they have a chance. I think they need a lot of chaos.
So, obviously, Florida State lose, Texas lose, Georgia win, so Bama doesn't have a shouting, a punching. You know what? Let's just run it real quick. I think it's gonna. I think very much it could potentially.
They would.
Michigan.
They want
and Washington.
I think they want Iowa to win this thing.
Or
even though Michigan beat them head to head, it just throws another data point in there where they could say, "Hey, we didn't lose to Iowa."
I guess quickly. Yeah, so that's got Ohio State there. It's basically got Texas. The computer has Texas leapfrogging this scenario, but you're saying, Con, if Iowa does take care of business,
OSU
and
there.
Then, that's the other thing I didn't pick.
Yeah,
I incorrectly picked there, and then we'll have Washington, so Oregon doesn't have.
So Michigan would be in there.
This is quite a scenario. Wild. But
yes,
it could happen. It could happen. And
the other thing is, I don't think it's impossible to have a scenario where Georgia loses this game and is still in. I mean, their resume would be excellent. The problem is, where's the spot where you're fitting them in? It's tough. They honestly, if they did lose this game, they'd probably be the best team to ever be left out of the college football playoffs since we've had it.
Easily.
But it's a year where there's not a lot of cracks to kind of weasel your way into.
Yeah, and it's, I guess on that note, for me, there's always this, what's the word? Maybe non-quantifiable, immeasurable idea of the intangible jump of, so in this case you're saying just at a surface level, going from how could they really foreseeably go from the number one ranked team all the way down to outside the top four? It's it's kind of semantics, but in terms of the potential jumps, it's like it's just tough for me to think of where they go from number one, and even in a way with this scenario that we just outlined here with Iowa, with a chaos scenario, it's like with Michigan, it's like I'm almost at a point where Georgia and Michigan, I think it's almost regardless of what happens, unless they were both absolutely blown out, obliterated by Bama and Iowa respectively. I don't know if there's to your point, if there's really scenarios where this top two, or these two teams, I should say, aren't in at this point. So I think it's really two spots truly up for grabs, which they very much are given the Washington-Oregon clash, and then with Texas, Bama, and Florida State being vulnerable. Yeah, it's the chaos is unbelievable, and what happens. There's not a scenario where there's drama in this. How it's lined up, there is truly so many drama type scenarios, Connor, and I mean, we just get to sit back and we'll just take it all in. And I think with that, we hope all you do the same. Enjoy this slate, and Con, I guess any closing words or closing thoughts before we close it out?
No, just that I cannot wait to watch a great weekend of football. Can't wait to see how this all sorts itself out. Can't wait to get mad at the committee no matter what they do.
Complain, yep.
And I'm JJ McCarthy. He's Cal McCord, and that's the episode.
I'll get there soon enough. I need one more year.